Okay, we're going to do something a little bit different this time around. Every quarter, we're going to have a deep dive into the data itself. As you all may know, every Friday at 12 o'clock Pacific time, I go over the relevant headline articles. I go over some of the general week-by-week statistics. But for this, I think a lot of people want to know what is actually happening quarter over quarter, year over year, and also some of the more finer things, such as like how long things are staying on market, median sales price, just a lot more numbers altogether. Now, this is the first time I'm doing this because usually like I said, every Friday I have a market update. But I think a lot of people should find a lot of value in this type of show where it's just much more truly data driven, which is what I always do already, but I want you guys to be exposed to this. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to, of course, reach out below. I want to always expand this as as the quarters go on. But of course, if you have any questions or want any help on your home buying or selling journey, I would love to help you and give you a competitive edge. Let's jump into this. First things first, I will always share some of the key areas: San Mateo County, Santa Clara County, Alameda County. I will also break it down between single family homes and condos and townhomes. This first chart is telling you about the sold number. There's all this misinformation about inventory is low. There's just no homes available. But if you look at this, it's actually a completely different story. And what do I mean by that? You can see quarter over quarter or even year over year, we have had the most transactions that we have ever had in the last, looks like at least year and a half. And so when people tell me, oh, there's no inventory, we have no options, that's not the case. The case is there are plenty of choices, plenty of at-bat opportunities, but you have to have realistic expectations of where your net even is. You should have more opportunities than ever before, at least chances. Now, whether you win or not is a different question, right? Because you're competing against other people, but you should not have a shortage of finding properties that would work. If you have a shortage of properties, it's because you are looking in the wrong area. Because as you evidently see, there is no way that the number of sold transactions should be this high if it was really a quote unquote supply constraint. And so it is a very strong buyer side out there. I mean, there's a very strong buyer demand, but you can see that you have plenty of choices. Year over year, I mean, look at these numbers. It's basically almost double the amount of homes that have sold the last the last Q2 2020. Of course, that was when things were completely locked down. It was terrible then. But the fact that you had double more than before shows one thing. The other thing is if you compare quarter over quarter, I mean, for the most parts, I mean, you're ranging from 30 to 67% in terms of homes that have sold. So it's certainly quite a lot of homes that have transacted over the quarter. So something for everybody to be mindful of. Now, what I also want to show you is the actual data itself. So fortunately, as a realtor in the Bay Area here, I'm very data driven. And at the same time, I always look at these numbers and I always want to explain to you so you're familiar with what you see here. There's a few things I want to cover every time, and feel free to let me know. Are there any other of these specifics that you want to know about? So for example, we have days to sell over the last 3 years that I can show you. So that's time, basically how long it takes for a home to sell on average. Months of inventory, so how long things take before all inventory is cleared out. The sale price to original price, you can get a general sense as to like where things are at. It doesn't mean the market is crazy or one way or another. Some areas have different strategies, and you'll see that very clearly momentarily. And the number of sales, median sale price, so we'll go over that. And number of sales per month, just so you can see for yourself how many are actually transacting in each of these counties. Now, I'm going to start off first. As you can see, San Mateo County, single family homes, the days to sell over time. You may see on the chart, I mean, you don't have to worry about July. That's a little bit early at this stage. But look at June. It is the lowest it has been all year. So the next question you may ask is like, how does this look historically? If you look historically, you can see it is very low. I mean, there were some incredible times. You can see this May 2020. That was actually at that time, it was the, early 2020 was one of the hottest times there was until obviously COVID hit and started to spread. But you can see the other the low points. You have the June, which is 23, and then the other high, a really hot time. This was April 2018, but we're actually hotter than at that time. So it gives you a sense, and it looks like it continues to drive lower. We'll see how this plays out. As you can see, sometimes usually once it hits kind of this bottom, then it somehow rebounds. So maybe there's some hope down the line, but we will see what happens. Next stat, let's take a look at months of inventory. Months of inventory, you can see it's pretty low. I mean, 0.9, 0.8%. This is some of the lowest that has ever been in the last 3 years. So incredible times. Back what I mentioned, there's a lot of transacting, but they don't last very long. And you can see that figure here. So they will typically sell within 1 week. It's pretty easy to sell within 1 week. They actually choose it to stay on the market for a week so that there's enough buyers and enough people interested to go see it and then have multiple offers. Otherwise, technically, everything can sell in 1 day if they just had offers that reviewed as they come. Let's take a look at the sell price to original price ratio. I'm going to make this less than a year, given there's just so much information here. So past 12 months, you can see the figures, right? It's a combination of homes are usually listed a little bit below where they should go, but at the same time, it's also being driven up by the high buyer demand. So right now, the sale price to original price ratio is about 110%, and that shows why prices have continued to increase. As you can see here, prices have continued to do very, very well, right? $2.1 million is where it's at in June of 2021. That is the highest it has ever been, and it's been a pretty stark increase versus the winter time. It's been one of the fastest growth areas altogether. Last but not least, let's wrap up with the number of sales in the county for single family homes. You can see 554, 519, 541. So there's been a lot of homes that have transacted. Arguably in that quarter, probably some of the highest it has been. So something to be mindful of. And this is San Mateo residential. Now let's take a look. Let's take a brief look is the condo and townhome market the same? The answer is not as much. I mean, you have the general trends, but it's not as steep of, in this case, as you can see, days on market. Usually I see condos offers are usually reviewed as they come. It's very easy, very predictable to find those and to win them. Townhomes, it depends. There's a little bit more competition there. Usually you have a couple of offers for townhomes, especially as people give up from other types of properties. Let's take a look at the months of inventory. So if you remember single family, it was at 0.9 months. At this case, you can see it's about 1.2 months for condos and townhomes. Sell price to original price ratio. Let's take a look at if there's a big increase. You can see it's not the same, 103%. So it's very predictable, 3%. And this includes condos and townhomes, includes townhomes. So the variance isn't nearly the same as single family. Let's take a look at the median sales price. You get an idea. You can see it's kind of been relatively flat in the last couple of months. You know, your median price now was at $958. It's increased from before, but it's kind of somewhat plateaued. And the last but not least, number of sales per month. You can see a pretty healthy amount, higher than it was before. So that gives you a story, right? So if you're looking at condos and townhomes, it's not that competitive. It's very, very doable. Don't get psyched out. But if you're competing against single family, you have to be ready to pay that premium. And there will be an appraisal risk that you have to factor in as well for every home. So those are the mindsets that I have all my clients have when it comes to properties, especially in San Mateo County and Santa Clara County. Because let's take a look momentarily. You can see it's a very similar story for Santa Clara County for single family compared to San Mateo County. So let's take a look at days to sell, the median. So you can see, I mean, it's even faster. I mean, this is the median price, the median days to sell. As you can see, it takes about 8 days to sell. So even faster. And it's been like this for a while now. As you can see, it's been like this almost all year round. So that's one number. Let's take a look at list price, months of inventory. My guess is probably something similar. Yeah, I mean, it's even worse, right? It's even worse than it was the other route. This was only 0.7 months. So that's something to be mindful of there. Sale price to original price ratio. It's very similar, as you can see, 109% for June. Very similar numbers, right? I mean, very, very similar numbers. And last but not least, sales number in the county, very high amounts. I mean, look at how many has sold in these 3 months versus the previous time. So yeah, it had a ton of options to choose from. So that's not the issue. It's all about maximizing your options and your choices. But you know, going forward, you can see typically the summer times is a little bit less. We will see this summer as well. I think it will drop in terms of volume, just given people that want to sell initially. We're back in the spring season. Now, the story is the same, though, for condos and townhomes. So I want people to really understand it's not the same story when it comes to single family and single family. You can see that it is still moving very quickly, though, because a combination of things. There's a lot more townhomes in Santa Clara County. And so because there's a lot more townhomes, they will get absorbed faster because it's still a very highly desirable type of asset. So the numbers are even are better than San Mateo County, but it's still about 9 days. So it gives you an idea. Most will sell within a week. Condos is case by case. Usually it's offers reviewed as they come. Months of inventory. You can see the numbers here for condos and townhomes. 0.9 months. So it's just a little bit better than San Mateo County, but still very, very low figures. Sales price to original price ratio. You can see very similar, 103, 104%. So very, very predictable as to where these goes. So let's wrap things up. Actually, you know what? Let's do 2 more. We're going to do Alameda County so people can see that. Let's take a look at days to sell medium, single family. Very similar, right? 8 days. I think I may have shown days to sell average before. Yeah, either way, it's still pretty low number. So as you can see, usually 1 week, sometimes they have 2 weeks. Like for example, this long weekend, they may choose to have 2 weeks, but it's really up to them. You have months of inventory, should be similar, somewhat similar levels. Yeah, 0.7. So very, very similar, right? I mean, the story is similar. Now the sale price to original price ratio, I want people to understand, is going to be higher. But so it's at 117%. So remember that, 117%. But if we take a look at the sales price medium, you don't actually see that kind of growth, right? So it's very important to understand the Alameda County market. The agents in general, the best practices for agents is to list it very low to begin with. As you can see, potentially 15 to 20% below where it should sell for. Because as you see, it didn't actually increase very much month over month. So you need to understand that. Now, whether you should use it as a blanket statement, maybe, but you should already have that in the back of your mind that there is a potential for that. So I tell all of my clients that are looking at Alameda County, yeah, just send me the properties in advance. I will tell you what this will likely go for. And if that works for you, great. If it doesn't, then you can skip it altogether. So that gives you a sense of what happens in Alameda County. So don't get discouraged. That ratio doesn't matter. As you can see for yourself, the last couple of months have been very flat. So that shows what it's actually selling for versus that ratio. So it just shows you that the list price is it's an artificial price that they are using to bring people in. In terms of the volume, you can see the volume has actually been very different than the other counties, right? The other counties, the last quarter has been a lot higher than it has been versus the other ones. But you can see it's just slightly more. Now, it just shows that at the same time is because in the past, a lot of people moved to Alameda County because it was cheaper and it was they didn't care about traffic. So as you see people shifting their thoughts as to their work policies, there's such a much higher demand now for Alameda, for San Mateo County and for Santa Clara County. So that gives you some insights there. The last place I want to go over is actually San Francisco. San Francisco, I think, is important. We're going to talk about single family. We're going to talk about condos. So the days to sell in single family, still very good. I mean, not as good as the others, but still sells very fast, 10 to 11 days. Let's take a look at the months of inventory in San Francisco for single family homes. The numbers are just a little bit better than other counties, but still very low numbers relative. 1.4 months it takes to clear out all of inventory. Now, what does that mean as well? The balancing act for a fair buyer and seller market is 6 months. Now, it's very hard to get to 6 months, but that gives you a sense of what is a true, like, not a buyer's market, not a seller's market, a neutral market. It's very rare. Only those times are only like massive recessions. The world is going to implode, but outside of that is always a seller's market. So let's take a look at a few. Let's look at a sales price to original price ratio. You can see what they do here is 116%, 113%, right? So you can see there's quite a big delta, but same as Alameda County, is it actually warranted? The answer is a little bit. San Francisco also tends to have these silly games when it comes to listing practices. It's not usually as extreme as Alameda County, but it is still there. But at the same time, you can see over the last few months, I mean, it has increased. I mean, it continues to do well, but not as severe as you may think. And so something to be mindful of, I would say they usually price about 10% below what they initially thought it would go for. And then because of rising prices, you have the additional delta of that 5 to 7%. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the last one I want to show you is the number of sales that has transacted. You can see it's been relatively consistent, right? The last quarter was probably the same as the winter time frame in terms of turnover. So nothing too crazy in terms of volume. Now, the last thing I want to cover is very important, which is condos and townhomes. Now, this does not include, in this case, does not include like TIC units and these other kind of almost miscellaneous ones. But at least you get a general sense of how is the condo market doing. Look at this, days to sell, medium. Condo markets, 15 days to sell on medium. So it shows you things are clearly moving, and they have moved a lot faster than they have in the previous months. It is the longest average time than all the other ones that we have seen. But at least for this case, you can see that it has done, it's still moving fairly quickly for those that are not as familiar or not catching up with things. Months of inventory, how does this look now? You can see 2.4 months, right? So it's not nearly as bad as you may think. Now, it's a lot worse or better depending on where you stand, because as you can see, last year, it was actually a buyer's market, right? With month of inventory over 6. Now we're at 2.4 months for the turnover. So that number is a very different change. And it all happened this year as people continue to return back to San Francisco. Let's take a look at sales price to original price. This one, as you can see, is 105%, nothing as crazy. Let's take a look at the prices so you could get a general sense of how this impacts prices. There's been modest increase. So it just shows like people are pricing it pretty much at where it'll probably go for. Sometimes you can buy it for a little bit under, sometimes you have to buy a little bit over. It just depends on the unit itself and how many bidders are wanting. But as you can see, there are plenty of people that are in the market looking for a home. So I hope this was helpful. This is a lot more of a numbers deep dive, so you can see all the actual data and statistics itself. The benefit of the Bay Area MLS for us as realtors is there's all these different counties, right? You have Silicon Valley chapter, you have a San Mateo chapter, you have a San Francisco chapter, you have all sorts of chapters. But the benefit is that I think over the last year or so, they actually consolidated the data so that it's all available through here. So if I look historically, actually some of it is missing because some markets like Alameda County were not part of this quote unquote MLS, but now it is. So the beauty is I can actually extract all this information because they create this alliance so that it's even more beneficial for you because I can now share this even more widely available. So I hope you like this latest episode. If you have any questions or thoughts, let me know below. If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button. If you have any data scientists, engineering friends, those that work in tech, share this video with them. I think it's very insightful for them to understand what is happening, what are the trends, where are things going, where are things likely to go. And this is a very much more just data-driven approach. But of course, if there's any topics about this that you want me to compile or pull from, let me know. I'd love to add that as part of our quarterly segment for the show. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll see you at the next one. Bye now.